And I am back. Well, I understand that the Antichrist at his trial in New York walked out during the closing arguments. He just couldn't take it anymore. According to the Associated Press, the orange bastard walked out on the closing arguments in the federal court as a lawyer for Eugene Carroll urged a jury to send the Antichrist a message that would make it clear that the Antichrist has to stop abusing her client, Eugene Carroll. Now, the judge overseeing this phase of the defamation trial, and by the way, as we all know, it's already been decided that Trump was guilty of sexual, whatever the hell they want to call it. I call it rape. The judge in this, Lewis Kaplan, interrupted the closing argument that one of Eugene Carroll's lawyers, Robert Kaplan, who, by the way, is no relation to the judge, or Roberta Kaplan, I'm sorry, no relation to the judge. And he interrupted her to note for the record that Trump, quote, just rose and walked out of the courtroom, end quote. The reason the judge did that is because when the filthy Antichrist files his appeal, once the jury comes back with their decision on how much to take out of his filthy pockets, the judge wants to make sure that an appellate court understands fully what happened. And the walkout by the Antichrist occurred shortly after closing arguments began, and a few minutes after the judge threatened to send Trump attorney, this crazy little bitch, Alina Habba, to jail. The judge said he's going to jail her if she didn't shut the fuck up when he told her to. Oh, my God. I understand. I'll get this in a second, but I understand Alina Habba's law school, which is, I don't know if it's accredited or not, but they want their law degree back that they gave her. Anyway, the judge told Miss Pouty Lips, Alina, quote, you are on the verge of spending some time in the lockup. Now sit down, end quote. And as far as the orange bastard is concerned, the Antichrist, he, according to the Associated Press writer, he appeared agitated. Trump did. All morning during these closing arguments, agitated. And at times he was vigorously shaking his head during Attorney Kaplan's closing arguments. Too bad he didn't shake his head enough so it'd fall off his rotten little shoulders. Now, he walked out right after Miss Carroll's attorney, Roberta Kaplan, said, quote, Donald Trump has tried to normalize conduct that is abnormal, end quote. Now, you know, one of the issues that have come up is what can they do to this orange Antichrist, this filthy pig Trump? What can they do, this jury or any jury, to make him shut the fuck up where it concerns Eugene Carroll? And that's what the purpose of awarding damages, punitive damages, compensatory. I think her attorney has already said between 7 and 12 million would make up for the damage done to her reputation. But as far as punitive damages, where do you go with a beast, a cockroach like Donald Trump? Where do you go? What do you do? Well, what I would do, if I were the jury, of course, it'd be reversed on appeal, I guess, but I would order the orange fucker to pay $100 million. That might, although probably not, but I would start at $100 million in punitive damages. Now, I don't completely understand any of all this law shit that we've all been forced to talk about and think about for the past 6 years, but it is my understanding that in a case like this, punitive damages cannot be so out in the ozone in terms of how big the number is. It has to be in relation to the compensatory damages. Now, I don't know what the formula is. But I heard the other night on, I guess, MSNBC, it might have been from Danny Savalas, but somebody said $100 million would probably withstand an appeal when Trump files an appeal about this. So who knows? But I would go to the billions. I mean, how else are you? But see, I wouldn't do that. I would just lock the fucker up. I mean, that's all. I know it's a civil trial, and I probably couldn't do it. But and I would lose my judgeship, but I think I would still do it. Anyway, these closing arguments, of course, today were in the about the defamation case against Trump, where it concerned Jean Carroll. Now, as we also all know this, the Orange Bastard is facing 4 criminal indictments and a civil lawsuit, 91 various felony charges. But that had nothing to do with with what happened today in the Manhattan District Court. The final remarks from the lawyers this morning came a day after the Antichrist managed to ignore the judge's rule severely limiting what he could say when he was on the witness stand, which he wound up lasting 3 minutes, and then he had to tuck his tail up in his hiney hole and immediately leave the witness stand. He just couldn't stand it. Once he got outside, the little orange coward said this, quote, "She said something," I guess he's referring to a defense attorney, "she said something that I consider to be a fake accusation. I just wanted to defend myself, my family, and frankly, the presidency." Oh, yes, I know. You're doing it all for us, the unwashed masses. I know. Well. Now, the judge, Kaplan, after the orange vomit walked out and after the closing arguments were completed, he instructed the jurors on the law. And by the time you hear this, they may have reached a verdict. I don't know. But the judge told them that they must accept the verdict reached last year, and that was that he was guilty of sexual assault, and in this trial only determine whether additional damages are owed because of what the Antichrist keeps saying when he was president about Jean Carroll. Now, she has, oh God, this is where I get so totally tongue-tied, because a normal human being would, after having made egregiously abusive statements, false statements, slanderous statements about somebody, and then fined $5 million, would shut the fuck up. But that's not Trump. Trump is a psychopath. And the damages that she was awarded the last time, collecting on those who have been delayed for years by the Orange Bastard's appeals, which is what he does. It doesn't make any difference. And see, to Trump, when he goes into a courtroom, and he's spent many court cases, civil actions, because he's a grifter and a liar and a cheat and a thug. But he knows that the appeals process can take years, in some cases decades. So it doesn't matter to Trump. Trump doesn't give a fuck what the verdict from especially a civil trial jury actually is. He doesn't care, because the damages that jury may award him, he knows exactly how to avoid ever paying them. Just keep the appeals process going, because, after all, he is a billionaire, right? And the people he hurts are usually not people who either give a shit, they just want to move on with their business in New York, or they're so-called little people like me, or like the 2 election workers here in Atlanta who were awarded $150 million from this pig. That's who he goes after. That's who he attacks. People that he feels will not have the money to sustain their representation through all these appeals. And if an appeal is to be heard and nobody shows up for one side, well, the whole thing can be dismissed. And that's what Trump counts on. Now, you know the story about what Miss Carroll testified, and yesterday, before the closing arguments began today, the Orange Antichrist said under oath that he stood, this is when he was on the stand for 3 minutes, he said, "I stand 100% behind comments I made in October 2002 deposition." That's when he denied Miss Carroll's accusations, and he called her sick and a whack job. He likes that term, doesn't he? Whack job, huh? Oh, my God. Anyway, one of Trump's attorneys, this Michael Medeo, argued at a conference between the lawyers and the judge yesterday that Judge Kaplan should not tell jurors specifically what sexual abuse E. Jean Carroll had suffered because it was, quote, completely unnecessary and inflammatory, end quote. And the judge more or less told Trump's attorney to fuck off, rejected the argument, and did remind the jury of the sexual assault. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.